Welcome back to the Obvious Choice Podcast. We have a special treat with you today. I'm joined for the first time ever with Drea, who is our coaching team lead for the online trainer mentorship. Basically, she has a ton of experience with coaches, with fitness, with health, with habit coaches, in helping them scale, but like helping them overcome all of the little in-between stuff. There's a joke, Dre, I don't know if you are part of this, a joke that Jason and I always laugh about, which is that a lot of the coaches who start in the mentorship with us don't even know what questions to ask, because the main problems and the big problems are actually the small kind of in-between stuff that happens day to day that you don't even know what's going to happen or if it's going to happen until it happens, and then it's often too late, which is why being a part of a mentorship or being with people who have been there before, who have creatively solved this helps. But maybe, this podcast will give you some answers so that when these things come up, you know how to deal with it. So the first one that I want to kick off with is kind of funny because somebody asked this. I don't have permission to say his name. So somebody asked this. We'll call him Steve. His name's not really Steve. In our Facebook group. So everybody in the mentorship, has their success coach to master with. There's specific skills coaches that they go to for help in specific stuff like content, like sales, like whatever. But then there's a Facebook group where people can just ask anything they want and get support, right? So here's what Steve wrote. I feel like it's always Steve. Amber, I need to be more creative with my fake names. Stefano. Okay, here's what Stefano said. My good buddy sent me this text. I'm time poor and not interested in any freebies, but it is challenging charging friends my full rate. How would you all approach this conversation and the potentially ensuing consult call? I just always get in my head with regards to selling my services to my friends, but I also know I'm not down to discount or give freebies at this point. The picture of the text says, dog, spelt with a G. Be very, very clear, dog is spelt with a G. I started getting pain in my shoulder from dumbbell press, flat and shoulder. I'm going to take a 1-week break to let whatever is hurt recover, but could I pay you for a new workout regimen? I need a change. Now, I gave an answer to this in the Facebook group, and then Drea gave an answer, and I said to Stefano, don't pay attention to my answer because Drea's is much better. So what did you say?
I asked him, I told him to ask his friend, do you want friend Stefano or do you want coach Stefano? Because those are different people that show up in that conversation.
And so give me some background on that. Why is that so powerful?
Well, it's getting permission, essentially, right? Which is what we talk about for everything is you want to have permission to have the sales potential enrollment conversation. And if he's just looking for friend Stefano is not, might be an enabler. I don't know friend Stefano, right? Friend Stefano might be, keep at it. Maybe you take a rest, maybe you do this. But if you want coach Stefano, that's a different scenario, right? If you want coach Stefano, that's giving permission to then go ahead, set up a call and dig deeper into what's going on, what your goals are, and where we need to go from there. And that sets the frame, the expectation of what that coaching relationship would look like going forward, because that's where you need clarity is what is when you're working with friends and family, what is the expectations around the relationship?
Yes. And I love that you gave him what he needed to ask for permission from his friend. He didn't push anything on it. It was, hey, respond with a question. How many times do we talk about that, Amber? Like the best response in almost every coaching conversation, not everyone, but like almost every coaching conversation is to ask them a question. And allow them to take the lead in the conversation, or you just gently kind of guide them. And then did you see the fallout of it? Did you see what he said afterwards? This was a day or two later.
Yeah, he followed up that he asked him who he wanted. His friend said coach, and he went ahead and he booked a call.
A call. So we don't know what came out of the call yet, but he set the frame for a coaching relationship. Now, we don't know whether this was a really, really close friend. I'm guessing it wasn't. If it's like a family member, like a sister or a brother, it would be very, very different than a third removed cousin who you see once on Thanksgiving. But we all have friends. It's like, I don't know, it's like guy codes. Like anybody who you meet once is your buddy, and there's no scale of buddies. Like I feel like we need different terms for like, no, this is a friend, this is an acquaintance, this is a buddy, this is a pal. Like we need to define those terms better, guys, because right now I have a lot of buddies and not that many friends. And some buddies are closer than other buddies. So where do we go from here then? Because you mentioned before we started recording, Drea, that this was part of what you wanted to cover with having difficult conversations, which is kind of what we do for a living, isn't it?
Yeah, they're all uncomfortable conversations, and that's something you have to get really good at. I mean, in every area of your life. It's not just your business. It's impersonal too. But Yegor Adamovich, if you remember Yegor, yeah, he's the one that said this to me a very long time ago, that the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have will directly relate to the amount of success that you're going to have. And it's just what you said. It's about asking questions instead of going with the flow. We need to ask clarifying questions. And the better you are at having uncomfortable conversations, the more ready you are to have those, the better coach you're going to be first, right? You're going to be a better coach. You're going to ask clarifying questions.
And the more interesting opportunities that will present themselves. And I think the part that used to get me down before I met people 5, 6, 7 steps ahead of me, like very successful, conventionally successful people, whether they're like, there's a line that I've been dwelling on, which is money will buy you a bed, but not a good night's sleep. And so, these are people that can buy a lot of beds. I don't know whether they sleep well or not, regardless. What they often don't speak about, or what's often not in this success world, is how many times these types of people get turned down or said no to or embarrassed by putting themselves out there. And so I will admit to you, I got turned down and kind of embarrassed yesterday. So what? And it was interesting because I asked somebody that there's this weird thing where somebody who has like a big platform on one social media account is like a big deal on that social media account and anywhere else in the world. But if you reach out to them on that social media account and you don't have a big platform in that social media account, you're like of lesser status. And so it would have been interesting if I reached out to this person on Instagram where I have 200,000 more followers than him, as opposed to me reaching out to him on Twitter where he has 100,000 more followers than me. It would have been interesting to see if the conversation would have went differently. Regardless, I reached out to him on Twitter and I basically just told him I was a fan of his work. And, I said that I had success in that field as well. This was self-publishing and stuff. And I said, it'd be really fun to connect, to like share notes. And he said no. He said no nicely. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for people who say no to me. But I dwelled on it because it was like kind of embarrassing. And then I went to sleep. And my wife was next to me. And my kids played, they basically played wake up tag all throughout the night, as 7-year-olds and 2-year-olds do. And I woke up today and I've completely forgotten about it until just now. So that was an uncomfortable conversation that didn't go well. What's that, Evan?
Sleep takes care of a lot of those feelings. Like instantly, if I know I have a rough day like that, it's like, just go to bed. It'll be better tomorrow.
And I didn't even sleep.
Yeah, exactly. You just need a whole new day.
Yeah. So what's another example of a difficult conversation that can come up then, Dre?
That's a great one, though, just to acknowledge that, because some of the best sales coaches I've had have said to me, the difference between me and you is that I've heard a million more no's than you. No is a great thing because, it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's a moment. It's an opportunity for growth, right?
Yeah.
But just to the basis of coaching, if you have a difficult client, you have a client that's having a difficult time, they're having a difficult time showing up for themselves, they're having a difficult time getting things done that you've asked them to do, and you've met them where they're at and you've pivoted. Sometimes you have to have that difficult conversation of like, listen, we're not doing the things that you really wanted to dedicate to yourself. And that's what they've hired you to do, right? They haven't hired you to constantly make it easier for them. They've hired you to help them rise to the challenge to be better. And those can be pretty uncomfortable conversations to call those people out and ask the questions you need to ask.
So what are some questions that you would ask, or how would you approach the situation if you have a client who's all gung-ho, and then after a couple of weeks or a month or even a few months, they stop checking in, they're not filling out whatever forms, they're not doing the workouts on Quick Coach, they're not whatever. What are some conversations, or how would you navigate that as a coach? What would your approach be?
I had this recently, actually, with one of our students.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it happens regularly. People have lives happen and different things pop up, and it depends on the person and the scenario of what's going on, because you got to get to know them, right? And ask other questions so that you understand how they learn and how they show up and how they behave when they're feeling overwhelmed. That's a major question I ask.
Okay. How do you figure that out?
Well, it's a bit of coaching for a long time, right? Because you see patterns in people.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things I do on the intake call is I ask them on our 4C call, I ask them, so what happens when you get overwhelmed? What do you do?
Ooh, that's good.
Do you disappear and do you go very quiet and do you kind of go in and get quiet and work? Or do you word vomit and you panic and you need a call and you communicate very well? Like, tell me what happens. And so I usually get an idea of what they say there, of what's going to happen and what kind of flags I need to kind of watch for as we're moving forward. Because we always want earlier intervention. If we can catch it early and ask the questions early and have the conversation early, great.
So in the initial intake call, when they first sign up with you, one of the questions you ask is, hey, when things aren't going your way, you feel overwhelmed, what's your response? That's brilliant.
I let them know too, of like, it's not always going to be, it's not straight up, right? Nothing is straight up. Nothing is, when you're coaching fitness clients, when you're coaching in business, things are going to be up and down and all over the place. So we need to know.
Are there any other questions that you asked during that initial call?
Like that. A lot of questions. Yeah.
Well, like that, to get ahead of problems or to be able to better identify when something is or isn't a problem and how you should react.
It depends on the person again. And thinking about this person, it's like they had a lot of time to dedicate and they came in with like, I need help focusing, I need accountability. So that tells me, okay, so where has this shown up for you before, where you've struggled with that accountability and needed your coach to kind of, reach in and kind of hear what you weren't saying and pull that out of you of like, okay, what do we need to do here, and really take massive leadership with them. And this was one of those people where I was like, okay, we're going to take massive leadership. I'm going to make some executive decisions for you. And we're going to have a panic protocol that if we're having an issue and you're going to have a way to communicate with me if you need a little more help.
And you get the buy-in for that in advance then?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think that's such a cool thing. I've never thought about that, but I think that's such a great idea to get the buy-in of what you're going to do, when things go wrong, which they inevitably will, but also just to get the buy-in to be more of an executive over their life versus a partner. And I think different people probably need different types of coaching, don't they?
Definitely. And this person was like, wow, you read me. I need that. Let's do that. So they were right on board. So then the first time that I had to bring up a difficult question, it was, do you remember when we had our initial conversation and we talked about, what I was going to do when I saw things just maybe not going on the trajectory that you wanted to get towards your goals? They're like, yes. This is one of those moments. Yeah.
Yeah, they knew exactly what was coming once you brought that up, didn't they?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But they were probably very grateful for it. I mean, that's a misconception when things aren't going right in a coaching relationship, because again, they never will go right 100% of the time because life gets in the way. We often tend to take on things, i.e. hire a coach to better ourselves, to transform, when everything else in our life is in a much more stable state, when things are going well. Now, I don't think that that's necessarily right. I actually think that the best time to hire a coach is when things are not going right, when you feel like you can't possibly do another thing, because the first thing the coach is going to do is call you out on your shit and say, here's how you focus, here's how you get back on track. And if you figure out how to fit it in when times aren't good, you're going to fit it in when times are also good. But that's not often the case when people hire a coach. And so the coach needs to be prepared to navigate these things.
I tell the students that when your clients are doing well, you're not coach, you're their cheerleader. They're doing a great job. You're cheering them on. The moment that they're struggling, that's when you start coaching.
Right. Okay. So going back to the question, because we got off on a tangent, which I'm happy about because it was a great tangent. The client's not following the plan. Or they might be following the plan, but they're not checking in with you.
Uncomfortable conversations, yes, and getting them on the call and practicing asking those questions that you need to ask to get them back on track, and redirecting them and asking them. This particular student, I asked them, they kept using words like I want to, I think I want to, I think I can, and I had to ask them, listen, you want to, do you feel like you deserve it? Do you feel like this is something you deserve to be successful in? And they were like, I've never been asked that. I think I deserve to be successful in this.
Wow. What a poignant question. What a poignant question. I'll tell you why that hits me so hard right now. Selfishly. And I'm making this about myself, but it's not about myself. But that just triggered something in me that I've been thinking about for a while. I don't deserve to have my company growing that much right now. Because it's not, I'm doing a lot of the work on myself that will feed the company moving forwards. But it's like, but I can't justifiably, I feel like, you think about Quick Coach as an example of that. Quick Coach is going great. The people who use it love it. But we're not making waves in our industry like we should be with that software platform, because nobody's putting the effort into the marketing of it that we really should be. And so if you were to ask me this question, do you feel like it, do you feel like Quick Coach deserves to be more successful than it is right now? My honest answer is no. Maybe there's something we should do about that, Amber. So what came out of that? So he said, it was a he, I think you said, right?
I just said they. It was
they. Okay, so they said. So I don't know who you're talking about. So
yeah,
they said. So they said, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where did it go from there?
Well, we ended up, I left them with some homework and some questions to ask themselves, because this is something that we see. This is like where, I don't know, you hear like the self-sabotage things happen. These are these moments of like, do you want this? Do you really want this? And why do you want this? Of like challenging them to give them back their why they're here, why they see themselves in this. And do you feel like you deserve the success on it? And they came back we actually had a call today. Okay. And they came back with a series of questions, and we laid out their rocks, and we laid out where their launch plan is. And they came ready with their wins of all the things that they got done in between our meeting. And I had seen their social media posts, and I'd see them moving forward, and they were like, you were right. Cool. I needed to be asked that question.
That's very cool. There's one other point that I want to go back on, because I feel like this is a stumbling block for people listening to this. Amber, I think you'll agree, but you can fight me on it. You said, I get them on a call. How do you get them on a call? Because this person is not following the plan. How do you get them on the phone? How do you reach out to them? And what happens if they don't respond to you saying, let's get on the call?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. And this person's been great because they've been very like open and honest of like, you know what, I wanted to cancel this call, but I knew that if I did, you'd call me and you'd get me on this call, which leads into that yes. We message, we reach out, I will call people, I will just book people into my calendar. I have booked myself into other people's calendars.
You just book them. You just send a calendar invite.
I would just, because you know what? I know that they wouldn't have invested in themselves to do this if they didn't really want to do this. And sometimes it takes somebody just refusing to give up on them, believing in them a little bit more than they might believe in themselves in this moment. Because I know they can do this.
I feel like I should have done that to this guy yesterday who said no. I mean, I don't really care because like I was like, oh, it'd be like interesting to talk to this guy. Like he's not, I don't really care that much, but I just feel like that would be really, really funny. Would be just like book a meeting next Tuesday at like 12 p.m. and it's like walk with John. Just see what happens.
What I like about that too, though, is that I think for a lot of people that when they know someone's reaching out like that, there's a lot of anxiety about what the next steps are, and not knowing will make them not want to respond. So you're eliminating a huge amount of steps for them by just taking care of it. And all they have to do is show up.
Yes.
And so I love that there's not this back and forth. They don't have to book anything. They don't have to go to Calendly or nothing. You took care of all of those steps. All they have to do is show up. I love it.
I agree. We've figured that out over the years, that back and forth of when do you want to meet? When do you want to meet? I don't know. When do you want to meet? Oh, I saw you Calendly. I don't have those times available. Like if you just book something, it becomes a yes or no answer and not especially if it's like short term, like you book somebody in the next day or two. It becomes a yes or no thing. Like, can you legitimately do it or can you literally not do it? There's no questioning any other way. I like that a lot. You know me, I hate the back and forth like that. Ghosting in the DMs. I'm going to switch gears to less of a coaching, more of a marketing, but I think a lot of marketing and sales is coaching, and I think a lot of coaching is marketing. So I think actually a lot of what we do in like, call it DM setting, DM sales, somebody inquires about your service, whether it's DM on social media or email, whatever it is, you have to start coaching them before you start coaching them in order to sell them so that you can coach them. And so what happens if you're having a conversation with somebody and you offer them a phone call or something like that and they ghost you? What do you do?
That's a great one. I love that one because if you've offered a call, you're already at the end game. You just gotta touch the third base. That's it. You just gotta slide in. So that one, my follow-up is pretty quick of I have tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. Does that work for you? I just follow up with a day and a time. That's it.
Amber, I think we need the penis joke song first off, because the slide into third pretty quick.
I know. It was absolutely killing me.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I got to find it. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Hope we made you laugh, but you didn't choke on our enormously funny penis joke.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you just give a concrete time.
Yeah.
And if they don't respond?
Then it depends on where we've been at in the conversation.
Let me go an easier one first, and then we're going to go back to if they don't respond. Yeah. If they respond and say that time doesn't work for me.
Great. What time that day does work for you?
What time that day?
That day.
That day. Not what time works for you. What time that day. All that you're doing here, to try to translate it from my brain, I don't know if anybody listening has the same brain as me. God, I hope not. But if you do, all that you're doing here is you are reducing the size of the container and you're reducing the load on them, making it as easy as possible to say yes. What other time that day? Beautiful. Okay, if they don't respond.
Then couple different ways.
Yes.
Depends. I'll do a couple different things. Sometimes I will either, if they've got a story up that day, if they've got something else that they've posted or something's going on, easy response to it, where I ask a question about it, because people love to engage about themselves and what they're doing, and they love to share and they love to be open. So that's like a softer entry, and then they see your other message and they feel obligated to then let you know.
Oh, missed your other message. Huh.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And sometimes if it's a little bit dodgy, where it's kind of been a back and forth, which I think we've all had that, where we're like, now we just need to seal a deal. Is it a yes or a no? So sometimes I'll ask them straight up, hey, if you've changed your mind about a call, no issue.
Right.
Let me know where your brain is at. Let me know what you're thinking.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, are we moving forward or not? Yes is great. No is fine. I just need to know.
Sometimes you just get an in-between of like, well, I'm worried about income. Great. Now we know what's really going on.
Okay. Is there a cost involved? What do you say?
Call is totally free. It's just to see if I can help. If I can, then we can talk about what I do and how I do it.
Okay, but I can't afford to do anything right now.
No problem. I still go for that call.
Yeah.
No problem. We can can you dedicate, this especially works knowing your avatar, right? The clearer you know your avatar, the easier it is then to kind of navigate these questions, because let's say we're talking to a parent, definitely a stay-at-home parent, usually a mom, is very easy then to ask them of like, can you dedicate 45 minutes to just talking about you?
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Can you dedicate 45 minutes to just talking about you? That's hard to do. I created a whole podcast, so I get to do it. But most people... I joke, but not really. So, okay. I love it. What else you got for me? What's next on your list?
Well,
One thing I want to point out, something that I love about what you're doing there too, is even if they're saying no money, right? Like people often use that as an excuse, but even if it's true, we have backup things that get them in our universe. So that way we can keep touch. So that way, if their situation does change, we'll be there. So we're not just dropping them like a hot potato because they have no money, which is like a shitty feeling. But to have someone say, it doesn't matter, I still want to talk to you, that's a whole different feeling. And if you can put them into something that they can manage right now, you earn so many bonus points for that. In my mind.
I also have no money for things I don't want to do and are scary, and I secretly want to do but don't want to do because it sounds hard and unfamiliar, and I've tried it before and it didn't work. I also have no money for those things. But, I spend money on other stuff.
And that's the thing, Amber, like, I love that you nailed that, because I say to the coaches, listen, because so many of them are to do, like, want to do this for very specific reasons, impact, right? So many of them is impact. It's like creating healthy families and healthy communities and generational health, right? And if you say that you're different, you better damn well be different. And if they say they don't have money, that's totally fine. Maybe getting on that call with you is the catalyst for change. I can't tell you how many times that's happened with me. A year later, somebody's come back with like, nobody's ever asked me the questions you asked me before. Nobody's given me that time that you gave me before. I'm in a position where I can do it now. I got started. What do I do next? How do I move forward? How do I sign up with you? You cared.
And that's a new thread. You don't know who they know, right? And the fact that you took extra time with them when there was really nothing in it, quote unquote, in it for you, of course they're going to want to talk about that. Like that's a pretty remarkable feeling to have someone spend undivided attention on you. So I think it's worth doing.
One of our wonderful students just got 3 referrals by doing this in the DM. He knew the person was not going to sign up. They weren't the avatar. It didn't matter. They kept asking him questions. He kept chatting with them in the DM, and they sent him 3 referrals that all 3 of them signed up. And he said to me, I get it now. I get what John's always saying. You get out there and you just talk to people and you just have real meaningful conversations with people, and people appreciate it and people want to share.
So how did that go down? So they posted was it a call to action? Like, how did that conversation start with that person? The original person.
I can't remember how it originally started,
Okay.
but they were asking questions and they just literally weren't in the student's avatar at all.
Yeah.
And he still spent time with them and asked them questions, and they were very mom commented on my stuff vibes.
Yeah.
And the student was like, I appreciate you. You always support me. Like, any questions you have, he would send them free resources whenever he had them go out. And then the person in the DM was like, listen, you've been so kind to me and giving me so much time. My daughter would really benefit from this. Can I introduce you? And Paul was like, Paul, I didn't get permission, but Paul is a lovely student and he is wonderful. And yeah, he went ahead and he set up a call with them, and then they sent another, and then they sent another, simply because he spent time with them.
I mean, this is the truth of business that nobody wants to talk about, which is over 90% of all business that still happens as a result of mostly offline word of mouth referrals. And sometimes that starts online, as this did. Often it doesn't, but sometimes it does. And a part of that is it's a very concentrated force. Most of your clients that get referred to you will get referred to you from a small amount of your clients. Like, I wouldn't even say it's an 80-20. I'd say it's like a 95-5, where you're just going to have a few clients who just love talking about you and are well connected and well respected. And you might be surprised at who they are. When I personal trained in person, there was one point where I calculated something like 70% of all of my clients were referred to me by one woman. Her name was Kathy. She was a 67-year-old grandmother. And there was one point, no shit, where I was training her husband, her 2 best friends, her daughter, her daughter's friend, her daughter's husband, and her daughter's husband organized a boot camp in the park with 4 of his buddies that I was also running. No shit. This was like that's your clientele. Like I'm like 20 years old, man. That's my income.
Yeah.
All from this one woman. And then I had another client named Tom, who was the head of the psychiatry department at that point, Sunnybrook Hospital. I trained him twice a week for 4 years. We became close friends. He became one of my greatest mentors. He's the one who actually handed me a book that set me down on this path all those years back. He never referred me a single person. And I asked him about it. I gave him shit about it one day. I was like, dude, why have you never sent anybody to me? Like, clearly you like working with me. Like, you keep showing up. Like, why have you never told anybody about me? He's like, because this is my space. Man, I don't want my friends here. I was like, fair. All right. So it's like a tale of 2 clients. You know what I'm saying? On paper, Tom would have been way better as the head of a medical department at a major university, young family man to refer me people, than a 67-year-old retired teacher grandmother. And yeah.
Introvert versus extrovert. All day long.
This is what happened. But that's what nobody wants to talk about, right? You can't measure it. And it always seems like it's random when it happens. But it's not, of course. It's not random what just happened to Paul. But it probably feels like it.
But that's why we always say with the students, yes, we have the 4 C's and we talk through, content, conversations, calls, clients. But I say, no, clients actually comes first. That's the lifeblood of your business.
Yeah.
They're already paying you. You reinvest into them. You are there for them. You provide excellent service to them. And then things like this happen where you get 17 referrals from one 67-year-old lady.
Yeah, I don't know if it was 17. But I did the math at one point, like I ballparked it because I didn't, I can't, it wasn't my gym, so I can't go back through the system to see how much training they bought from me. But I did the math. I mean, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years because many of them trained with me for years. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars in training fees that this one woman was solely responsible for. And not only that, they actually never stopped. I left the gym and I passed them off to other trainers. And many of them are still training with those trainers today. And this would have been 2008 to 2011. And many of these people are still training with the trainers that I passed them off to. Crazy shit, man. It's wild. That's this business, right? Mm-hmm. All right, what else you got for me? This is fun. This is great. It's one of our best episodes, eh? But why don't we? Who's that other guy that's usually here? Can we replace him? Let's go.
I think that kind of comes back to knowing your avatar too, of like knowing these referrals and where the referrals are going to come from. And I think people overlook knowing your avatar so well because people just talk about it in a marketability stance, but it actually bleeds into the entire lifeblood of your business. It's how you fulfill, it's your client journey, it's how you renew people, it's how you plan and grow your business, it's how you plan resources, it's how you ask for referrals, and then it's how you plan graduation potentially. Maybe not in this case with your clients that stayed forever and ever, but it's how you potentially plan graduation for them to go off and do it on their own because you taught them everything they need.
Right. Okay. Next stumbling block.
I would say a really big one is things that the number one thing that students overlook is planning time off. Taking vacation.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. They get so narrow focus on work, right? They're so like blinders up, focused on work, the next call, the next thing. And so many of them are like, they see stresses in the business or create problems in the business because they're looking at it so closely all the time. But they started doing this for a reason, right? They started doing this business for a reason to be able to live their lives and have freedom and travel and do these things. And then they turn around and build a business where they're not doing any of those things. I've had students have their highest record months that they were on vacation for 2 weeks out of that month.
Interesting. Do you think that's a kind of a forced constraint? Or do you think that's an energy conservation? I'm falling prey to what I call the Sesame Street razor by inserting my hypothesis into the question. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because which side of it which side are you asking?
Why do they have such good months often when they take more time? Because I have seen this myself too. The more time that I take off, the better I show up and the better my business does.
Yes.
And I have a few theories as to why. One is probably the people that I work with and that work for me and that work with me are smarter than me and better than me. And somehow I figured out that secret. And so I just like leave them alone more to do what they do best. Probably some of it. But why do you think that is?
I think it's just what you said, that they come back. Well, they rest, right? So with our students, they're telling they're not programming every single day for their personal training clients,
yes,
right? Like they have to have rest days. So why wouldn't you practice what you preach? Why wouldn't you have rest days off the business? Why wouldn't you take time off? Why wouldn't you stop working and go have dinner with your family? You take a rest, you take a break, you relax your brain, you refresh yourself, and then magic, when you come back to work, you're firing on all cylinders, you're ready to get going, you're creative, you're excited again about the clients and what you're doing and what you're building. And then it just becomes easy. I think the more they focus on it, the more close fist they get, and then the less they're open to abundance. When you have open hands and you're relaxed, well, you can catch a whole lot more with open hands than you can with closed fists.
To add an addition to that theory, right, is when we keep picking at it, like when we're there all the time, you keep picking at it. But when you take time off and you're away from it, you can't pick at it anymore. Because usually whatever you create first, with minor editing, like whatever your first official draft is usually your best draft.
Yeah.
But then you keep going back and looking at it, and you keep fucking it up because you keep messing with it and questioning yourself, and you've ruined what was originally a fantastic piece. So when you aren't allowed to do that anymore, your original fantastic piece of work gets to do its job, which I think helps.
This is one of the big problems of the digital era.
Yeah.
Is that most of what we do now, we can infinitely change and is never defined as finished and out into the world so we can move on. It's also why I have largely designed my life and my business around print books. And that was where my energy took me. But that's also because I read myself long enough. I mean, I did 8 digital programs. And what I realized over the years was that print was much better because you could put it out and you could leave it and let it work for you or not work for you if it didn't hit hard, and learn from it and move on. But the point was, you work your butt on something and you have that kind of end date, which hopefully you meet. And then, it's out in the world and it's done and it's finished. And by definition, because there's finality, I think there is an element of seriousness that is missing from a lot of what people do, like short form social media stuff. Sorry, man. It's just no finality to it. We all know that it's going to be gone tomorrow, even if it hits hard. It's just distinctly different skill sets. Now, neither is better or worse, but they're very different skill sets to develop and muscles to work. And so this digital era that we're in, maybe I'm an old fogey, kind of hating on it. I don't know, probably some of it. But I actually think that there is a lot of value, even if you work in the digital world, to act like you don't. To have a filter around what you do. For example, if you have an email list, every time you're going to send an email, imagine that for every email you send and everybody that receives your email, it's going to cost you the cost of a stamp to send it. Which means that if I'm sending an email to 70,000 people, I have to look at that email and say, okay, is this a $150,000 email? No, I mean, that's extreme. Like, not all of my emails are $150,000 emails. But when I start to think that way, it kind of clicks my brain into what I call a less stupid gear, and focus more. But I love Dre, this idea of taking 2 weeks back to go back to that, because I put a pin in it and wrote down some notes because I wanted to listen to you both because you had great insights, and I also wanted to make a point when you had finished your insights if you hadn't covered it. Here's what I have found that does for me. It's a forced constraint that systematically makes me better over time. Mm-hmm. When I know that I'm going to be totally off. So here's what I say to people, literally, if they're like, oh, I don't think I can scale my business. Oh, I'm feeling stuck. Oh, I'm feeling burnt out. I'm like, here's what you do. A month from now, you are going to book 2 weeks off in your calendar. What? How can I possibly do that? I'm like, oh, fuck no. But you're going to figure it out. And the act of figuring it out is going to make you way better and make sure this doesn't happen again. So here's exactly how this is going to go down. In the next month, as you prepare for those 2 weeks, you're going to be really nervous. You're going to overcompensate. And you're probably going to burn yourself out more worrying about all of the little holes and things that are going to go wrong. And as a result, you're going to patch up a lot of the systems in your business. You're going to do things much farther in advance that you hadn't done. You're going to prepare the people that you work with for you not being there to be much more self-sufficient. And you're going to build the documentation amongst what you're doing. Now, you're not going to get it all right. In fact, you're probably going to get a lot of it wrong. But you're still going to be totally off for those 2 weeks. And stuff's going to break. But it's only a fire if you know about it. So you're going to have a wonderful 2 weeks and you're going to recharge. And you're going to get back. And you're going to look at all of the things that you thought would work when you were gone. And you're going to see which ones did. And you're going to check it off and celebrate and high five yourself. And then you're going to take stock at what didn't work. And those are your gaps. Now you have a very clear example of exactly what you need to do to get your business to operate without you. That's what that constraint does. Now you know what steps to take so that you can take more time off and or hand off things, hire other coaches, whatever you want to do to be able to grow your business, or just build more freedom into your business. Maybe you don't want to grow it financially, which I think is perfectly reasonable if you've gotten to that point. That's why I love that constraint personally.
And then you have to nurse your ego because it didn't go nearly as badly as you envisioned. Yes. That you were not as important as you had imagined. We've learned that one for John and I.
It's so funny. Oh, but
it's like, I'm so needed. Oh wait,
they're gonna miss me so much.
Happens. Oh,
you were gone? I was wondering why things worked well this week.
It's so great that you had that exact example, because we just had one of our students go through this on a cycle, right? Every time they took time off, every time they took a weekend off, every time Monday morning they were like, there's like 30 messages, there's 40 messages, there's 50 messages, there's 70 messages one time. So between myself and a couple of the other coaches, we really challenged them of like, okay, how can we systematize? How can we automate? How can we delegate? How can we do this so that when you take time off, you're off and you come back to beautiful, everybody's having a great time. And they just took a long weekend off for their partner's birthday. They went to the beach. They had a wonderful time. And they sent me a screenshot Monday morning. Dre, there's one message from a client.
That's so great.
How is this real? How is this real?
Those are the types of stories, honestly, that I love so much about the online trainer mentorship. It's nice getting all of the messages that we get in our like Slack wins channel. It's like, I made all this money. I made these big sales. Like, it's nice getting those. But the story that you just told me where it's like, this person was able to take a long weekend off with their partner and go to the beach. And because they've systematically been getting better bit by bit by bit by bit, they were able to have this wonderful time and then get back and not have had fires burning all around them.
They finally built their business around their life.
Bam.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Okay, do you have one more for me? We got time for one more. What's the best one? What's the best one you got on that list?
I actually might want to bring it back to the beginning with the uncomfortable conversations.
Do it. Okay.
Only because the uncomfortable conversations might start with the coaching, but they then carry you through with all of the other uncomfortable conversations that we talk about, like raising prices or an unhappy client, maybe a refund, or sales calls, objections, renewals, and then leak through into you having better, more meaningful, uncomfortable conversations in your regular life as well.
Okay. So what's another example then? I want to get super tactical.
A very specific one. Yeah. So, my favorite uncomfortable conversations now, they were not. They were the worst ones. They were the ones that made me go red and like panic a little bit, and my stomach like drops to the floor of an unhappy client. Not good survey returned, and an unhappy client wanting to leave early, or maybe not what they had expected in the process. And those uncomfortable conversations were the biggest opportunity for growth in me, in my coaching, in sales, in all of those pieces, and carried over into me just being a better friend and a better partner and a better parent, of how to translate those skills of, like you said, asking deeper questions, not just taking the feedback and being like, okay, I'm awful, that's fine, that's okay, I'll take all the blame. No,
Right.
turning around and asking the questions we need to ask.
Huh. So really it's all about this willingness and building this muscle.
The openness, not just to like potential criticism, but also just asking the deeper questions from them of like, why do you feel that way? Is that fact? Is that feeling? Did that happen? Why did that make you feel that way? What did I do and say that made you feel that way? Because sometimes it's not a you thing at all. Often it is a them thing and a perception, because perception is reality. So you have to figure out what their perception is and what reality they're coming from, so you can either uncover the real issue.
Right. What's an example of somebody he worked with, one of our coaches in the mentorship, who had a client who came to them with an issue? Can you think of an example off the top of your head that you were able to kind of help this coach that we're mentoring help their client? It's weird to say like, oh, help.
Yeah.
We coach this coach to coach other people. It sounds kind of pyramid-y. But can you think of a very specific example there?
Yes. One of our students recently had this, where they had a client that was hot and cold, where they would feel so great and be so thankful and have such a great workout. And then at their end of week review, it was, I don't understand why I'm paying for this. This isn't going well. I'm not seeing the results. This isn't happening. And the student came to me and was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm just changing things, and they were essentially over queuing. They were like just trying to change everything. The client wasn't perfectly happy. And I was like, okay, let's get on the phone and let's find out what's really going on here, because this is not a you thing to be so up and then so down. There's something else going on with them that we need to figure out how we can meet them where they're at.
Okay. And what was going on? How did they, let's ask this a different way, because it might be personal. How did the coach then go deeper with the client? How did they approach that?
So what we did was, first we role played it out together, and we were like, okay, let's go through their data points, because we realized that all of their coaching calls, they had been rescheduling. Actually, every single coaching call that had been scheduled had been rescheduled. So that was one data point. Okay. We also had data points of where their check-ins were literally the day right after they had sent such a grateful message of feeling so great, and the very next day their check-in message was the complete opposite. So we went through data points first of, okay, these are the facts that we're seeing that are happening, these are the trends that we're seeing that are happening, and it's brought us to this moment. So these are our facts, and obviously you have feelings. So how do we connect these, and how do we figure out where the inconsistency is here? Because we're Jekyll and Hyde. So what are we missing?
So that was the conversation then that the coach had with the client. Like here are the facts. Here's what I'm seeing. But then here's your feelings, which I also totally respect. So what's happening? Like, yes,
what am I missing?
What am I missing? What am I missing? That's a good question. That's a better way to say it.
Yeah. And it was something personal. It was something happening on their end. Sure. And the coach was able to go ahead, meet them in the middle, change things up to relieve a little bit of stress and help move them more into maintenance versus pushing. They were working with a competitive athlete. So sometimes sometimes you have to pivot the plan so that they can manage their personal life, because personal bleeds into performance, bleeds into business, bleeds into everything. And that's exactly what was happening here.
I found over my years of training clients that was when clients were rescheduling or canceling last minute, it was almost always a sign that some serious heavy shit was going down in their life. And when I was more experienced, I remember having this happen. I was training somebody, and I'd been training him for a while. It was months, it wasn't years, but we had built up a good relationship, and he was a great client a couple of times a week. And all of a sudden, almost out of nowhere, just like that, he started like canceling last minute almost all of the time. I mean, inevitably I'd finish with a client and I'd be expecting him and he wasn't there in 5 minutes, and I'd look at my phone and he'd have sent me a message while I was with my previous client saying, so like very apologetic that he can't make it. Please charge me, right? And after this happened 3 or 4 times, I called him. It wasn't as well structured as you, but I called him and I basically said, like, what's going on, man? Like, we had a good relationship. I think his name is Eric. I said, what's going on, man? And in addition to a divorce, him and his partner at his business were having like the nastiest like legal battle basically over the business. And the follow of that for me was like, okay, the last thing you need is me to put more stress on your body through workouts. So here's what I'm going to do. Like, here's a whole bunch of 20, 30-minute workouts and then stretches and stuff. If you want to come in and see me to go through these together, I mean, even just to hang out, to get out of the house, whatever it is, like I'm going to cancel all your recurring sessions. Come in, send me a message the day of. I'll tell you when I have 30 minutes. He lived in the area. I'll tell you when I have 30 minutes. We'll go through them together. Obviously, you can do them on your own. And, when's a good time for me to, if I don't hear from you, when's a good time for me to touch base with you again, to see whether you're ready to start going again. And I don't remember, he reached out, we saw each other once or twice in like the 3 months. It wasn't often. And then when the shitstorm had passed, he came back and became a great consistent client again. And that was it. I mean, we almost never spoke about it. All right.
A phrase that I like for conversations like this is, I need your help. Because it automatically puts them in a more comfortable mindset, and people love to help, right? And it also doesn't put them in the, oh, I'm in trouble, kind of mindset. Yeah. And you are asking for their help. I need help understanding. Here's what I'm seeing. And they just seem to not match up, and I'm feeling a little confused. Can you help me understand? Right? So I need your help. And so it becomes less you against me and us against this problem that we need to address. So it puts you on the same team, and it becomes a much more comfortable conversation to have.
And like we said earlier, when they are going through difficulty, this is where you really get to be the coach, right? This is where you get to really show up for them, because when they're struggling, I mean, John, you said it, this is when they need you the most, right? Mm-hmm. So it's, how can I meet you where you're at? Well, you still helping you take care of yourself, take care of your health, take care of your business, whatever one it is. How can I help you continue to do that so that you then can free up that space to take better care of yourself and handle this situation that you need to handle?
Drea, this was fantastic. I'm so happy, Amber, that we did like a seriously coaching-centric episode like this. Because I get the feeling from a lot of conversations that we have that people think that the online trainer mentorship is just about sales, just about making money, just about scaling, and don't get me wrong, like those are things that we absolutely help with. But at the end of the day, your clients are the most important people that you work with. And if you do a really, really great job with them, if you get really, really good at this stuff, like you got to get the initial clients, but the rest of your job gets a lot easier and a lot more fun and a lot more fulfilling. And I don't think we've showcased that enough. Just how seriously
the scaling
we
is
take
a byproduct of this stuff.
I love how I say stuff and it takes like 2 minutes, and then both of you just come in and like nail it in a sentence. This is fantastic. This is great. I'm not even needed here.
We had a moment to process that you didn't.
This is fantastic. I love that I'm just working myself out of a job by just surrounding myself with brilliant people. This is great. So if you are interested in learning more about the online trainer mentorship, I'm at It's Coach Goodman on Instagram. Send me a DM that just says mentor. Or if you're not comfortable with that, you just want to fill out an application, just go to onlinetrainermentorship.com and there's an application there. Another episode, I'm going to recommend an episode that is coaching, scaling specific, has to do with the mentorship as well, give you more insight into the process and also help you a lot with big stumbling block. It's episode 222, and it's called DM Sales Mastery for High-End Fitness Coaches. Basically, everybody says, oh, how do your clients? It's like, oh, you got to DM people. It's like, yo, what do I say? What do I say when they don't say stuff? How do I navigate that conversation? So we go through all of those conversations in detail here. I've actually never seen this depth of sales process published anywhere before. So that's episode 222. It's called DM Sales Mastery for High-End Fitness Coaches. You are going to want to have a listen to that one, and then you are going to want to get a notebook and go back to it and have a listen in much more detail. Hope that you enjoy it. Drea, thank you so much. Can't wait to have you back on. You're awesome. Amber, I mean, we'll probably talk in like 10 minutes anyway, so talk to you soon.
Probably.
All right, bye.
Bye.